Welcome to the Maverick Mindset podcast, a podcast that will explore the stories of people who have chosen to take life into their own hands, in their own way, and define what success means for them. Be prepared to be inspired, motivated, and maybe even learn something new. My name is Romeo Santos, and I'll be your host. This is the Maverick Mindset podcast. Let's go. What's up, Maverick Nation? Super excited to bring today's guest to you. His name is Tony Acevedo, and he is a local Annapolitan. He is a transplant from New Jersey. Tony started his life in New Jersey, ended up going to the Coast Guard. He's a crazy fitness buff and has all sorts of incredible credentials throughout the fitness industry. And he is a maniac skydiver with over 600 jumps in just the last 4 years. Super excited about the show. You're going to hear us talk about him anywhere from jumping out of planes every weekend to flying his own plane to fighting Samoans that outweigh him by 40 pounds and living to tell the stories. So let's welcome Tony to the show. Maverick Nation, let's go. All right. Welcome, Maverick Nation. Everybody help us to give a warm Maverick welcome to Tony. Tony, thanks so much for joining the podcast, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So listen, why don't we get started? Tell us like your highlight reel, right? Who you are. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way back and bring it all the way forward. And we're going to unpack a little bit along the way.
All right, cool. So I'll start from the top and work my way back since you're going to unpack my deepest, darkest secrets. And I'm going to habitually cry on your podcast. So thank you. You're welcome.
Beautiful.
If I do cry, it would probably be the first time anybody's seen me cry in a very long time. So anyway, yeah, thanks. So currently right now, I'm just finishing up my PhD in human performance. I'm a nutritionist. I currently own 2 different companies, one Kicked-Off Fitness and Performance, which is a fitness company. So we do generally kickboxing, boxing classes, and then the other is strength and conditioning. As well as I own another company, part owner of another company called Performance Sports Rehab and Nutrition, which I do the nutrition aspect. My partner, Brandon Cohen, he does the rehab aspect of it. He's a doctor of physical therapy. Other than that, man, I have been in the fitness game for over 20 years. I know I look super young. That's what everybody's going to say, but yes. And then, man, I've traveled all over the world. I've worked with Olympic athletes. I've worked with, NFL guys, all different various types. My dissertation's in menopause, which I get a chuckle at that all the time. My thesis was on menopause. My majority of my studies are on menopause. So it's kind of comical in the sense of when I'm doing talks, and especially in a large dynamic full of, doctors who are generally female in that range, and they see me and they're like, what is this guy doing? But, I like to challenge myself. Let's just say that. So, but other than that, man, over the last years, if we keep on winding, I've traveled the world a few different times. I've taught all over the world. I spent 4 years in the Coast Guard, which is legitimately the proudest moment of my life. And I would honestly say is what created who I am. And then before that was high school and madness and dysfunction.
Okay. All right.
In a nutshell.
Perfect. So who was Tony as a kid?
Man, I was a mess. To be honest with you, I was legitimately, and I tell this to people and they laugh at me, but if anybody who went to high school with me will agree with this. I was probably least likely to fail. I didn't have any structure. I was all over the place. I did many illegal things. I thought fighting was more important than anything else, which evidently made me a great boxer. But other than that, man, I just didn't really care. And then at some aspect, my stepfather kind of set me down and gave me that really hard kick in the gut and was like, look, either you're going to be like everybody else. I grew up in New Jersey for the most part. I was born in Brooklyn, but pretty much grew up in New Jersey.
Okay.
And he pretty much said, either you're going to be like everybody else or you're going to do something with your life. And that was when I was like, well, what's my options? At the time, I didn't think school was really necessary for me because I was so all over the place, but I cared about money. So he was like, well, why don't you go to the Coast Guard? Well, luckily, the Coast Guard recruiting station was in the town of Fort Dix, which was right next to us. And I was like, perfect, let's go talk to him. I think he might've came to the school one day or something like that. And shit you not, 2 weeks later after I graduated, I was in the Coast Guard.
Oh, wow.
And, anybody who's in the military, they know what they do to you. They take your tough exterior and break you down, and they build you up what they want you to be. So then that's exactly kind of what happened.
Okay, interesting. So And I've heard that from other folks that have experienced military, and I don't have the benefit to be able to say that I was able to, although I do look back on life and wish that I did have the opportunity. I think it would have actually helped me a lot sooner in life get to, further places along. But talk to us a little bit about that. Like, how do they break you down? What do they do to you while you're in that structure?
Well, ideally, progressive through the weeks, they have a different scenario, like it's sense of urgency, or I can't really remember. Mind you, that was over 20 something years ago. Ideally, what they do is they try to take who you were, because, without getting too deep into me, I grew up without parents in a sense. So I really am a story that is a story within itself, because I didn't have that cookie cutter life. Like, when people see me now, they think I was a trust fund baby, which is kind of comical to me. But, I came up in that rough area of New Jersey, worst high school in New Jersey, didn't have direction, didn't have guidance, which makes you worse because you're just aimless. Mm-hmm. And I have an older sister who was very similar as well. And, you're going into the military where you've never really had parental guidance, minus my stepdad, which God bless him, because he took on, I love my mother, by the way. At the time, she was dysfunctional. My sister, was dysfunctional. Myself, who was probably 10 times dysfunction. He took us on, and then we go into the military, and they're trying to take this guy who all he gave a shit about was punching somebody in the face, and didn't have any direction. And then you have to essentially get that out of me, and then start implanting things like structure and design, order, respect, devotion to some specific duty. You start building that person in 8 to 10 weeks, which is, it's crazy. And I think that's why, I obviously didn't realize this probably to 10 years after, I got out of boot camp, and I look back and I'm like, oh shit, man, like, it is amazing what they do to somebody in that amount of time. But you also have to be receptive to it too, right? Like, sure. I went in there with an open mind, and I essentially just put my hands down and was like, look, sorry, are we allowed to curse?
Yeah, we're not going to get too crazy, but sure.
No, but essentially, well, pretty much I accepted the fact that I was going to be their B word, right?
Sure.
And I just took it on and took it with a grain of salt, whatever happened, and I conformed to that. And the reality is when I got out of the military, I was a man. And I think without that structure or design, I would have still been a boy trying to pretend to be a man. So it really had guided you. And, especially now, a lot of these entrepreneurs talk about high school and what they don't teach you, which they don't teach you life. Sure. They don't teach you the fundamentals,
100%.
In which the military prepares you for that too. So, and I think that's where I've kind of always had that when you grow up with no money and you grow up, embarrassed because you went to the food store with food stamps and you never quite had anything that you ever wanted, that drove me to always try to progress in life. And that's kind of where I'm at now and where I've always been. And man, I always say this in life, there's two different formalities. It either breaks you or makes you. And the reality is life was breaking me because there wasn't any structure or design there. The military made me, and now it was my job from then on out, because there was no more structure for me to, account for that. And sadly enough, like a lot of the times, not to speak for anybody else, but for a lot of guys and girls who get out of the military, they struggle because they lose that structure. And then they're like, oh shit, I have to do it for myself. So I think that's where entrepreneurship is really exciting, because it really is, it's either me or no one else. And either I create or I make the bed, or there's no such thing to lay in. So yeah, that's kind of where it is and where the military came up. But yeah.
Okay. So I'm curious, though, from a mindset perspective, you said all I cared about was punching somebody in the face. You have a conversation with your stepfather, you go to the Coast Guard, and you go into the Coast Guard with an open, receptive mind, which is a massive shift from the person that you said that you were being. How do you think that happened? Like, what was it that clicked for you that said, I'm going to make this change and go in open-minded? That had to have been incredibly hard.
Man, I'm not quite sure. I think it was a conformity that it took plenty of years. And I think part of that, which I accustomed to, is called maturity. But at that aspect, granted, even in the Coast Guard, I still wanted to punch people in the face all the time. But it was a matter of, I still do now, but it's a matter of right. Like, I control my life. Like, I am very controlled. Back then, I didn't have any control. I was just a maniac. But the way they do it, they make it to a point to where, because once you sign that dotted line and you raise your right hand, you're government property. That's it. And if you don't want to abide by that, you go sit in the brig, which is jail. So it just is what it is. You don't have a choice. But the way they do that, they make it to where what you thought you were is nothing what you really were. And what you are is what they want you to be. And it kind of sounds, it's militant. Well, shit. I mean, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of how it went. And at some point in time, you start realizing that. And I'm not really going to tell the story because I was like, oh, who gives a shit? But I legitimately remember the story of when it happened. I was coming down the flight of stairs because we were stationed on the 3rd floor. There was 3 levels in boot camp. And I remember I was coming down, and Sergeant Schlemmer, who was the leader of our boot camp, I remember coming down, and I remember him saying my name. And then he says, oh man, what was the, man, I can't remember, but it was the formality of the Coast Guard. It was, there's commandments. And you had to memorize them verbatim in order. And I remember there was one I could not remember. It was, do not relieve your post until properly relieved. And I could not remember that. And the rules were all around the 3rd flight. So he would make me recite them. And if I got them wrong, I had to go up to the 3rd flight, come back down. And I shit you, like, Romeo, I remember it was easily 8 to 10 hours. Everybody was in their racks, sleeping already. And I was still perpetually going up and down. And I could not remember the 3rd commandment. And I remember that was the point in time where I was hysterically crying. I was miserable. But I remember that was a time where I realized that it was time for me to change and conform because I wasn't beating the system anymore. And that's kind of where it went. And then after that, it makes you, and that's not for everybody, but you have to kind of conform to society. You have to become better and all this other jazz. But yeah, it was great.
Interesting. So I hear a couple things in there that I want to unpack, right? So like you found at that moment that you had to conform, or maybe another word that some might resonate with people is that you just kind of, now I'm going to draw a blank on the words, right? But you just submitted, right? You just submitted and said, all right, I just need to submit here. But then I know you, right? And I know your life, and you've got a really cool story, and we're going to continue to get into that. But it doesn't appear now that your life is very much of the form of conformality. It seems like you are now choosing your path every step of the way. So isn't it interesting how you had to let yourself break down, submit, conform, discover who you were. And then when you came out, you were able to do all these things that you've done along your life.
No, without a doubt. And that's why they do that, right? Because for you to be a good leader, you have to know how to follow. And even when you're on the top, you're still following something, whether you're recircling that back around or, whatever. We're always going to have a boss of some formality. So there's always a projector, following. I mean, ideally, as Americans, we're following the Constitution. We're following our chief of staff. So there's always some formality, but that's where that teaches you. It breaks you down and say, okay, look, you're square zero. It's time for you to learn your place and learn your role, bro. Like, get in the pecking order. And then, where I'm at now, I'm slowly moving up, and you're still always in a place. And the reality is where I'm at now at 37 years old is I'm at a level of humbleness. And I think that comes back with the word I used before, maturity. And it comes with knowing my role as well. So it all plays a role, man, and it all helps.
Nice. There are a couple of things when you were talking and telling us your story that made me think of some quotes from a couple other people. And you were talking about some people when they get out, they struggle because they don't have that structure anymore. And I was listening to a podcast recently with David Goggins, and he's like, man, can't anything motivate you? You have to motivate yourself, right? Like it all starts here in the mind. And if you can't own that part of it and motivate yourself there, then you're kind of lost. And so I kind of hear that in you. And I see that all the time in business and entrepreneurs is, they say they want something, but then when you see their actions, you're like, but wait a minute, man, your video is not matching your audio. You say you want these things, but you're not doing any of the things required to actually have them, right? And then also there was another part where you're like, I still wanted to punch people in the face. I just had control, right? And Jordan Peterson says that, a good man is not a passive or a weak man. A good man is a dangerous man who just has control over it.
100%.
Right?
Man, now that I feel like the world has a lot of these public speakers, man, they say reality without a doubt. And it's not just, gimmickly memes or anything. That there's a lot of validity to that. I love Tony Robbins. Les Mills. Like I love listening to those guys, and I still listen to them continuously because sometimes I need to recheck myself and kind of like, you know, essentially get into my own head. But man, the truth is even probably the last year of high school where, you know, I really started being focused on where I wanted my career to go because I knew I didn't want to be there. Mm-hmm. You know, I started really working hard. You know, I get up and I'm at work by 4:30 every morning. I don't stop working till 6 or 7 p.m. continue. And that's every single day. And when, you know, you hear a lot of the guys are like, you know, somebody who's rich, and by the way, I'm not rich by any means, but I am rich for me. Like I consider myself rich. Everybody's got their own definition, right? But they talk about hard work and dedication, and there's no doubt about that. Like you have to grind, and I see you grinding all the time, and you know, you created this podcast, and I think it's super admirable. And those who want more have to go out and create their own opportunities. And when I get new trainers in, and sadly enough, in the training industry, they think that it's easy money and they're going to be rich. And I'm like, well, you sure and shit should never do this for the money, because that's not how the industry is. Right. But the reality is, I'm like, if you put enough work in, you put your time and effort in, something's going to transpire from it. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I'm at now. And that's how it's happened for me. So
I love that. I love that. There's a great saying that I love that Zig Ziglar says, and he says, if you do more for the things that you get paid to do, eventually you'll get paid more for the things you do.
There's 1,000% truth to that.
Right.
1,000% truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Okay, great. So we get out of the Coast Guard. What comes next for you in life?
Well, at that point, man, I moved around a lot. I moved to Hawaii. I fought pro for a while, getting that anger and aggression out. And then I remember vividly waking up one morning and was like, you know, I don't want to do this anymore. So I ended up, I feel like, to be honest with you, I feel like that day that I woke up, I feel like I put the street and the anger and the aggression, because I was a bitter individual. And I don't know why. I mean, you know, I'm probably just bitter just because of my lifestyle, whatever, or I had to be too, because, you know, if you weren't tough, you were getting your ass kicked all the time. Mm-hmm. So I put that bitterness aside. I came back to Annapolis. I almost went into Baltimore City. I was 2 days away from the academy. I ended up pulling out, and I ended up becoming, a buddy of mine ended up getting me into the mortgage industry. And at that time, I think it was like, 2006 or something like that. It was booming. And I did that and bartending, and I was making hand over fist money. And then, you know, the industry started to fall, and I was like, you know what? I packed my car up and I moved to California. And then that's when I landed. Like I was in California for 3 days, and I landed my first job, my first like real training job as the fitness director over at Gold's Gym in San Diego, Point Loma. And man, that was when I realized.
Is that the Gold's Gym? Is that where all the guys trained?
No, that's in Venice.
Okay.
In Point Loma down in San Diego, it's a little bit more fancier. It was cute, very cute, but it was huge. But that was when I realized like everything that was leading up to that point had to come into fruition. Like it had to be done, because I took a position where they used to have companies come in and be the training directors, but now I was building a brand new platform for Gold's Gym because they got rid of the companies. Man, I probably worked, it was easily 3 months. And I used to commute from Oceanside down to San Diego, which was probably about 30, 35 minutes. And I used to, you know, had a motorcycle at the time. And I did that for about 3 months without a paycheck, just grinding from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. continuously. And I remember all of a sudden things started to transpire. And before I knew it, I was making like 80, 90 grand. Well, you put me back at, you know, 2007, making that, you know, I was like, okay, this is really, I'm starting to do all right here. And then before you know it, the guy who owned the boxing clubs recognized that, and he was putting one in Point Loma. And then he said, well, how about you go run my location in Carlsbad? I'll give you a piece of the pie and I'll give you a nice big paycheck. I said, oh shit. And then before you know it, it went from that to LA boxing to I ended up opening up a smoothie shop just because I ended up graduating from SDSU with my nutrition degree. And I was like, Jamba Juice is trash. I could do better than that. Ended up doing that. And this is my quick story, by the way. This is my 20s in San Diego. Ended up selling that, and then I ended up traveling the world and then moving back to Maryland and opening up Kicked Up, which I've had now for 8 years. But that was the point, is that would have never happened without that initial grind of me saying, okay, this is a new job, this is a new department, 3 months without a paycheck of 12-hour days of getting crushed on top of an hour commute every day. And then before I knew it, you know, look, somebody recognized my hard work and they gave me my opportunity. And that's like, I tell that story, not to a lot of people, because I don't boast about stuff, but when they ask, they're like, well, how did you become who you are? You know, especially I like to tell that story to people who think I'm a trust fund kid. Like, yeah, I'm more likely to help my parents out than my parents were ever like to help me out. But, you know, not saying anything to them because,
Sure.
you know, my mother has always had my back in every aspect, but it's just, you know, perpetual grind. But that's not always to say though, because I've had, you know, friends of mine that have been on that grind that they haven't gotten their break. And, you know, will they ever get their break? I would obviously like to hope to say, yeah, but that's not always the case, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I love that you shared that because I think anybody listening to this podcast, they're probably listening to it because they want to continue to grow as entrepreneurs or grow mindset or whatever it might be. But there's a lot there to unpack, right? Like you took a job, so you took a leap, right? You packed up, you drove across the country to California, probably found a place to live on the fly. You get this job, and it sounds to me like they tell you, we'll give you a shot to grow it, but you don't get any reward until we see a result. Is that accurate?
It was 100% commission based.
Right. So 100% commission based.
I was selling the training and I was trying to facilitate it. I'm trying to hire, like, it was great though.
So you go and you do all this and you're grinding with no results. But then when it finally pays off, it pays off. And then ultimately somebody else noticed you and then they came and gave you another opportunity. And I just want people to really hear that, right? Because especially in my industry of real estate now, or even when I was in hospitality, which I still love hospitality, it just crushes people, is that people come in and they almost have this entitlement, right? Like, well, I should be making money now. And it's like, well, why should you be making money now? What have you done to deserve to make money right now? Right? Like nobody owes you anything, right? You have to go out and you have to earn it. You have to prove it. You have to grind. And then you will begin to get the results, right? But it doesn't just happen because you made the choice that you want to do this. You have to show your worth. You have to show your value. And then the universe rewards, right? Would you agree? The universe rewards hard work and effort.
Without a doubt. And it's very similar in my industry. I 2 master's degree. I'm just about finishing up a PhD. I got over 300 college credits. I got 10,000 hours of mentorships and internships and, 21 years of experience. And I still don't get paid that much money. So like when somebody comes in, what makes you think you're going to make more than me? I spent 20 years in the trenches trying to figure this out. So it is like that. But, I think, I don't want to say times have changed because I kind of feel like as we get older, every transitional or every generation always says that times have changed and, people have gotten softer, whatever the situation might be. I just think in the world today that we live in, it has gotten expensive and we want to live certain ways, especially if you grew up a certain way, you want to transition or that's all you know, right? Like if you grew up with nice cars and nice things, when you get to 22 years old, all of a sudden you got to fit your own bill. You want nice cars and nice things. You don't know what it's like. My first car was a 1980 Camaro that barely moved. So I was like, you don't know any different.
Yeah.
But it is. And whoever watches this and realizes that I'll tell you right now, without even thinking about opportunities or objections, if you don't grind or you don't put your all into it, the probability, and I'm a statistics guy because that's what all PhD guys do, the probability of you being successful is a lot less than you going all in. So like Les Mills just said, he's like, whatever you do, and man, I love that guy. He was talking about an opportunity like when he was a disc jockey and he was talking about, he's like, whatever I do, I'm doing it the best. If I'm cleaning something, I'm doing the best possible way I can do it because my name is on that situation. And I think if more people had that mentality of where, look, this is my name, I'm Tony Acevedo, whatever I do is going to be the best of my ability because the last thing I want is somebody to come behind him like, that's done like shit, who did that?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a reflection of who you are. Yep. And, you're a little bit older than me. And I know if you remember the time, remember when they used to use the phrase, my word is my bond?
Yep.
That has been almost disappeared. But back when we were younger, like that was it. Like your word meant everything. Same of who you are. Like I think that's where our transitional aspect has kind of dissipated a little bit is because we've lost that. We've lost like that persona, that identity of where if you do something neglectful, like that deteriorates you. nowadays, like if you do something bad, you get a bad review online, but.
Yep. Well, and it's just a news cycle, right? 48 hours and it's gone.
Yeah.
Whereas before, yeah, for sure. I agree 100%. It's funny that you say that Les Miles would say that everything he does, because I would always tell people, this is more so when I was in hospitality, but I would tell people, listen, if you are a crappy server, a crappy bartender, crappy busboy, crappy line cook, and you tell me that, well, it doesn't matter because this is not my real job, I'm going to college to be a doctor, guess what? You're establishing your work ethic now, and you're going to be a crappy doctor too.
100%. Because that's probably the best thing you've ever said. And that's one hell of an analogy, because, man, that makes so much sense. Because in the reality is, like, look, even me as a business, I still clean toilets. I'm still grinding. If you're a doctor, you still got to do that same stuff too. You're not just going to step over it. Like, you still have to have that ability to be humble enough to say, like, this is what I need to do because it's still part of my job. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, and a leader, I mean, I believe as a leader, there certainly becomes a point where if your business is large enough that you're probably not, doing everything, and you have leverage and you have people that are doing things, yet I don't think that any leader can truly be successful if they are unwilling to do anything that they're asking others to do.
I agree with that. And I also, full disclosure, I'm the shittiest manager ever because of that. And my problem, and it's always been my problem, is I'd rather do it myself just because I know it's getting done sufficiently and it's getting done at that moment, because I'm impatient as hell about everything in life. So, like, I am just a terrible delegator. And it's not because I don't trust people. It has nothing to do with that. It's just a matter of, like, look, something needs to get done. Let's just get it done now. And shit, why don't I just do it?
Yeah, there's an urgency inside of you, it sounds like. And I have that same struggle. You're right. It's hard. Sometimes you get frustrated and you just do things. That is like a constant learning thing to do. So entrepreneurs out there, most of you are probably the same way. That's why you're an entrepreneur, because you have a sense of urgency and you want to do something that you're not seeing out there. You're solving a problem, whatever it might be. So that's pretty normal. And I think that's one of the things that I have a coach, right? And so my coach, that's one of the biggest things is, like, you've hired these people, you have to give them the role, tell them how you want it, and then give them the opportunity to do it. Right. Yeah, I agree. That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
All right. So you fought professionally. Tell us a little bit about that. I'd love to hear that story, because I've never had that story told.
No, it was good, man. I moved to Hawaii, and I moved there because there was a lot of talk when I was younger and in the boxing game, and that Hawaiians were the hardest people to knock out. And at the time, I was such an egomaniac that if I'm going to be tested, why don't I go to the best, right? And shit you not, man, I landed there on a Wednesday. My first fight was out Friday. It was like, I think it was like 182 pounds. And I fought, his name was Puma. And I remember this guy, because him and I hung out, we became best friends thereafter. He was like 220 pounds, this big Samoan dude. And I remember him hitting me in the stomach in the first round. And it was the most miserable punch I've ever received in my life. But then, who I was is I turned into a street fight. I went to the center of the ring and I banged him out for 3 rounds. I ended up losing to a decision because he was definitely a way better boxer. He was beyond bigger than me too. But it was great because I earned their respect. And if you know anything about Islanders and the way their culture is you have to earn respect to them, especially if you're a Holly, if you come from the United States. So it was amazing, man. After that, every time I went out to the bars, I was always integrated. I got, a security job, and, I had plenty of other fights thereafter, which were amazing. I didn't lose any time after that because I made sure I fought somebody my own weight. But there was a lot of truth to that, man. Samoans, boy, they don't, Samoans or Hawaiians, the same. Yeah. They don't move.
Yeah.
Literally a big bag of bricks, man. It's
okay.
That was really it, man. I only had 6 fights. It was good. It was pretty short career, and I did it for the money. And at that time, MMA was becoming a real big thing. And I'm a chess guy. I'm not a checkers guy, so I really enjoyed boxing for that aspect. I like to think. I like the real, like, the movement aspect of it, where MMA is at the time, now it's really methodical, but back then MMA was like
brutal.
Oh, you wrestled? Cool. Get in the ring. Like, you didn't, there was nothing to it, but yeah.
Okay. And then you've trained US boxers, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did you get into doing that? Was that more on the strength, or was that a boxing coach thing?
Be honest, it was a little bit of everything. I mean, I was definitely more educated on the strength and conditioning side of things, but the boxing side I stood in where it needed to be. But when I took that job at the boxing club, man, there was some super high level coaches for boxing. Abel Nunez, another guy too, that they didn't need me on that aspect. I more or less just went in there and had fun and boxed with them. But definitely the strength and conditioning side was probably more prevalent.
Okay. Now tell us a little bit, where did Maryland fit in? Because now we've heard Maryland twice. So you came to Annapolis, then you left, and then you came back to Maryland.
Oh yeah, well, I got stationed here.
Okay, so you were stationed at the Coast Guard location here.
Right here in down on Thomas Point Light.
Got it.
So that's where Maryland came about. I think I was stationed here for like 2 years or something like that.
Okay.
And then I got out here in Maryland, and then, you kind of go back to where you're comfortable, right?
Yeah.
And led me back here. And even if I wanted to leave, I'm still here. Like, I don't understand.
Okay. So you're back in Maryland, and at that point is when you open up Kicked Up Fitness?
Yeah.
Okay. And how many years ago is that now? 10 years?
8 years ago. So 2013.
Okay. 2013, you opened Kicked Up Fitness. Walk us through that journey, how you decided to open your own business, the steps you took to do that, and like how you found the location. Talk to us through that.
I had this concept because, I spent probably like 6 to 8 years, watching other people own gyms and how they did things. And I learned a ton. Mm-hmm. But then evidently, as you grow as a human, you take a little bit from everybody that you learn, and then you start conforming your own thoughts. And that's exactly what I did. And that's where the concept came for Kicked Up. Wow. I was like, wow, the kickboxing gyms are awesome, but I want to do it like this, and I want to add strength and conditioning and blah, blah, blah. And then, I think I just got lucky, the right place at the right time, found this location. I was like, holy shit, it's perfect. It makes sense. It used to be a karate studio that was here for 20 years. So already had a really good reputation, and my landlord was cool as shit. And man, I didn't have much money, but I remember I was grinding. I talked to a bunch of people. I borrowed money. I did whatever it took. But I knew at the time that if it didn't work after about the first month or two, it was over because I didn't have any more money. So I barely, pinched the pennies together. And luckily, I got a couple significant mothers in Annapolis that just transpired, and it grew organically. I never did marketing. It just was straight organic. Okay. And for me, though, the way it grew, and this is kind of like COVID really killed everything, so I kind of have to get back to these roots. I went through this town 50 times. I was shaking hands left and right. I was building relationships. And then before you knew it, after the first 6 months I was here, they knew who Tony was. They knew who Kicked Up was because I was out there grinding on the streets. And that was, what they used to call guerrilla marketing back then.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Listen up, everybody. You actually have to get belly to belly with people sometimes.
I to this day, looking at everything I've ever done, without a doubt, by far, that is your best bang for your buck. One, it puts the business in your own hands. And two, like ad spends and all this other jazz, website, but that really helps. You got to have a platform. But for me to go shake your hand and for you to know about me and I know about you, that holds volume. Mm-hmm. You clicking on an ad doesn't hold volume. You feel no rights to me. And dude, when people cancel from the gym, they feel bad because they feel that connection between, there's a connection. And I think that's something that definitely is missing now is we're missing that connection. And COVID, man, that pulled that gap further than it's ever been. So
it's really funny you say that.
Aspect.
Yeah. And I think it's really funny you say that because, COVID, I haven't been able to get to the gym. I'm a member of your gym in 6 months, and I am still religiously paying my membership fee each month.
Appreciate you.
Right. So I think you're right. I think that there certainly is that element that, especially early on, you've got to build the brand of you, right? Like you have to share with people who you are, what's important to you, what type of person that you are. And through that, you're able to develop these connections that I think, it's like I tell people on my team all the time is, you need to make sure that you almost, not that you intentionally make people feel guilty, but that you develop such a relationship with them that if they choose to do business with somebody else, that they do have at least a little feeling of guilt around it.
100%. Yeah. I was thinking about that while you were talking, like, especially in your industry, you break bread. Like that's how you build relationships. That's how you build a relationship from the stand of time. From what we know about from the stand of time is what did you do? you grabbed a drink and you had a meal. Like that's just what it is. And it shouldn't go away. It should never go away. So if you're building a business, whatever it might be, I don't care whatever you're selling or not selling, like that's extremely important. And it forever will be. Like, you know, and it will, so like, think about the saying, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know.
Yep.
That will never not be a thing.
100%. There's one to follow up with that I think is incredible as well, is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah, that's deep. That's great.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and you know, there's a lot of people that go out there and they just try to verbal diarrhea all their knowledge on people, but they're doing it in a disingenuous fashion, and things don't work out and they don't understand why. And it goes, well, because people can read that, right? People know what genuine is and what genuine is not. And if you're not being genuine, it's going to speak volumes. And I think more and more and more now, like that's really what people are looking for, right? People right now are really looking for people that are being honest and true and genuine with who they are. I think that these types of conversations and these types of podcasts are picking up more steam and more, you know, interest, because people are very much into like, I want to know the person. Like, great, you did these things. That's cool. We can listen to all sorts of things about that, but I want to actually know the person. Like, I want to understand who they are. And I think that's the attraction, right? Like, people are very interested in other people's stories, especially since we're so disconnected. Even now, I mean, with COVID, like I tell my wife jokingly all the time when I talk to my friends, I'm like, I tell them all the time, I can't wait to come hug you. You know, I just want to hug you. I want to shake your hand, give you a hug, give you a big bear hug and pick you up, right? Or if I can pick you up, right? Because that's missed, right? Like you miss that human connection with people. And I think that COVID, if anything, is helping to strengthen that in our minds, that like the human connection is really, really important. I think it's going to change life in a lot of ways, where you'll have digital meetings and you can be more efficient. Yet people, I think, are going to cherish those bread breaking times even more than they did before.
100%. 100%.
Tell us about your gym. You said that it's a bit of a hybrid. I know all about it, but I think it'd be great for people to know about it. I think it's an amazing concept.
Yeah, essentially what it is it takes the two main important aspects of fitness, right? Your cardiovascular aspect of it, and then your muscle development or strength and conditioning aspect of it. So the cardiovascular aspect, boxing, if you've ever boxed before, there's nothing like it. You can never replicate it. Like it just
total butt
for
kicking
anybody
workouts.
who goes in there and throws the gloves on, and you know, if you've ever been in a fight, how long do fights last on the street? Maybe 20 or 30 seconds, and then they're like. But that's just reality, because it's so hard. It requires so much oxygen. So we do that aspect. And the good thing about our gym, as opposed to other gyms, and the way I created the class structure, is it's always different. You know, and every instructor has their own jazz. They have their own style, which is good and bad for some, because some you like, some you don't. And this is what it is, right? You kind of have to pick and choose. But the other aspect of it, we do a ton of personal training. You know, it's not a huge weight room. It's only 2,000 square feet, but it's our atmosphere here is very family oriented. It's like a Cheers. Everybody knows everybody, which is great. And, you know, it's not for everybody. And that's the good thing about the fitness world. There is a little bit for everybody out there. But if you're the type of person that, you know, you actually want to go out and talk to somebody else or meet somebody new, or, you know, all my trainers, even myself, we always give advice. We're never like, oh, you got to sign up for a session. Like it's super laid back. And even I just had a guy come in today and he signed up, him and his wife, they just moved out of town. And he goes, why was this so easy? I was like, why would it be so hard? Like if you go to a big box gym, if you want to get out of that contract, you got to give up your firstborn child. You got to give them a blood sample. Like it's just ridiculous. I just don't understand why it has to be so complicated. Why does anything have to be so complicated? I don't know. But
well, I'll tell you what I love about the gym is I really love the amount of intensity that you can cram into a 45-minute session. You know, and it's really funny. I've recently, through COVID, man, I've put on, I'm like 212 pounds. Like I should not be more than 195 pounds, right? Like I'm packing it on. And I have a gym downstairs. You know, I've built the gym, right? We've done all this stuff. We have the Peloton bike. I think we have the tread coming as well, right? Like we have all this craziness, yet I'm not in any way, shape, or form exerting myself in the way that I would if I was actually at the gym in the environment with all those people around that are pushing. The workouts that you get in that environment, I think, are just ultimately the best workouts that I've ever had. And you're right. Like anybody that's listening, if you're local and you want to join a gym, definitely need to check out Kicked Up Fitness. Like the boxing classes, I've done some of those others. So you mentioned LA Boxing, and when I lived in Rockville, they put one there, and I joined there for a little bit, and I really didn't like them too much. But when we go to your classes, like they're awesome, right? Because you're doing burpees and you're doing sit-ups, and then you're doing squats, and you're hitting the bag and you're kicking the bag, and you can tell that the instructors are really trying to make sure that you're not just focusing on your right oblique with your right hook, but they're also bringing in the left, so you're hitting both sides, so it's really balanced. I think that what you're doing and what you've been striving to do is really great, but I think you missed a couple other pieces, because look at all the stuff behind you. You do also offer some additional services that I think are really helpful for folks. Tell us about those.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously I do nutrition, and then Brandon does the physical therapy, and then we have Brenna who does she's a licensed massage therapist. So we definitely bring, and this is where me being a leader set that platform, right? Like education is primary, and then after that, then you have to give a shit, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing. So my interviews with trainers is, it's more of a conversation in the sense of like, okay, cool, I see your resume, that's cute, that's great, but now who you are as a person. Like, you do this industry because you actually care about somebody. You cannot do this because, like I already said, you can't do it for money. But another aspect of the gym, our slogan is never given, only earned. And I've lived by that since day one of my life. And that is the reality. So sometimes I get people would say like, oh, I'm super intimidated of your gym because everybody's in shape. I'm like, no, they're not. I said, but I will tell you one thing about my gym. When you walk through my door, I expect your best effort, whatever that might be. But I'm like that about everybody every single day. Don't waste a day. Like, you're not like, and this is what's crazy about me and the way I think in my life is I've seen a ton of death. I know me getting in my truck today and driving to my apartment is not guaranteed. Yeah, I know that. And I live for that. I don't, I'm good with my money, but at the same time, I live for that. Same thing with everything else. Like, if you're going to walk through the gym doors, don't come here and half-ass to stay. Give me everything you got, whatever that might be in your book, in your definition. Give me what you got, because that's what I want. And that's the culture of the gym. And that's why you'll see chalk going through the air. You'll see sweat flying, and now people freaking out because of COVID and there's all the sweat and all this stuff. Don't worry, it's not contagious or good. But that's the culture of the gym. It's like, you come through the doors, you go as hard as you possibly can, and then you go home. And that's what we're about. And I don't know how it cannot not be like that.
Yeah, I love it. All right, now we're missing something that I know personally about you that we haven't mentioned that I think that you should share, because I'm really actually interested to learn like how you got so into this. Tell us about all this craziness, you jumping out of a plane all the time.
Oh yeah, ooh yeah, that's my favorite. I'm actually going to Florida next week because I can't take it. It's too cold here. So Dana bought me. I've always wanted to do it, and I was just never financially able to do it. So, as I think it was a honeymoon gift or something, wedding gift or something, she ended up buying me a course to learn how to skydive. So I ended up doing that. That was like, maybe 4 years ago now. And I probably go every weekend. I got 600 skydives. I have a plane. I love to fly. I'm a private pilot. And it's funny because the people who know me, that like all my fighting days, and they always said that every time I would fight, I would always smile. And it was a weird thing because to me, the adrenaline was like, I honed it. It was a weird thing. Like, I enjoy that kind of stuff. So the same thing with skydiving, like, it's such a high adrenaline rush that to me, it's almost like therapy. Like, I had to find that, like, okay, I can't go punch someone in the face anymore because I'm an adult and I have shit to lose. Like, that's obvious, right? So I have to find some alternative, and that's my alternative. And, I try to go once a weekend if possible.
That's incredible. Once a weekend. So, I love that you say that, right? Because would you agree that being an entrepreneur is high stress?
1,000%.
And that there are a couple of ways that you can get your release that I think is an absolute, you have to have a release. And one of it is through physical exertion, and the other one would be through some sort of a chemical use or alcohol.
Yeah.
Right. And then one of those is healthy and the other one is not. Right.
100%.
And I'll tell you what, like, I meditate. Do you meditate? Do you have a morning routine? I know you're up early.
I've tried my hardest, but no, I don't.
Okay, fair enough. So meditation is certainly challenging. It's a work in progress for me. I'm not like, a Zen master by any means. And yet I do meditate each day. Yet the only time, and I've been paying more and more attention to this, the only time that I can 100% quiet my mind, 100%, because my mind's going a mile a minute. I have 8 million ideas every 30 seconds, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only time I can quiet my mind, my neighbor and I, we started mountain biking at like 4 o'clock in the morning in the dark with high power lights. And it's crazy, like effort, because you're up and down and it's dark and you got to be focused. An hour to an hour and a half, I don't think about anything. I
love that.
That's my I get back, I'm totally out of breath. I feel like I want to throw up, but I feel incredible. Like I feel so energized, and those are the best days that I have when I experience those.
Dude, I love the fact that you found that, because I push that. I don't push skydiving on anybody, maybe a little bit, but I try to tell people all the time, like, you have to find that balance, because as an entrepreneur, like, man, and I hate to talk about it, but this last year has just been miserable, right? But you have to find where you can actually release. Like, of course, you can lift weights and all that stuff, and it's extremely helpful. So you always have to have exercise somewhere in your routine. Mm-hmm. The number one prescribed thing in this world is called exercise. I don't care what fashion you do. I don't care if you do bar or you walk. It doesn't matter. You have to do something, right? But it's also extremely beneficial to do stuff like that. And, if you're not a Zen person, or if you can't really take it down, and I'm just that guy because I think about 6,000 other things that I should be doing as opposed to that, you have to find alternatives. And it can be anything, man. I love the fact that you found that, man. That's good for you.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a little bit too cold lately, so that's been a little bit miserable to get out there, and then snow and rain and yada yada yada. Not to sound like I'm complaining, but yes, that's fine. And so it just made me think of it when you were like, that's skydiving, that's your release. And I can't imagine. I mean, when I was younger, I definitely wanted to skydive. And I know you're probably going to tell me that I'm totally wrong, although I do have a wife, so she's going to say it doesn't matter if I'm wrong. But now that I have 2 daughters, it's like, I don't know if I want to jump out of a plane, right?
Well, no, you're not wrong, because you have to mitigate risk, right?
Yeah.
Like it is a thing. And I think, I don't remember if I mentioned, you might have said something, we might have even been in Barcelona. You might have said something and Sarah was like, oh, hell no. Maybe, if I remember correctly, but it was Barcelona. There was tequila.
That's right.
So
I almost forgot that so everybody listening. So we were with our significant others in Spain, in Barcelona at the same time. And Sarah and I were on our
randomly.
honeymoon.
We didn't plan that.
Yeah, randomly. And we got to go to this incredible market. What was it called? The Mercado.
Yeah.
Right. And we went to a flamenco show. That was awesome, right?
That was a really good time. Yeah. Yeah. We definitely drank too much that night. Yeah. So, definitely, if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening to this, find something that's going to balance you out, whatever that might be. It will help in so many aspects of life, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So listen, Tony, what are you doing? What are you trying to promote? Is there anything you're trying to get off the ground that we can utilize this platform to help get the word out?
Nothing. Nothing in particular, besides the fact of, obviously I'm trying to rebuild the gym. We took a huge hit because, of course, everybody was afraid of the gyms. And sadly enough, without education, the gym got demonized for no apparent reason whatsoever. There was no literature backing that. So ideally, if I was going to promote anything, and now that finally the WHO, the World Health Organization, finally backed up, I was like, oh yeah, if you're healthy, you have a stronger immunity, you're less receptive to COVID. I got COVID, never even known it. I just got vaccinated as well. Actually, the second vaccination kicked my butt, but
I keep hearing that.
Health will out-trump anything in life, and that goes for everything, right? So if you're afraid of the gym, I cannot stress enough that you should not be. And like Romeo said, there's nothing like atmosphere. It will push you beyond your limits. And now with all these home videos and Peloton, and great, they're cute, but there's nothing like, I tell you right now, if you stand next to me, I'm going to outwork you. And then if you outwork me, I'm going to make sure I outwork you. You know what I mean? And that's a level of competition that's really great for people. And it's a part of life. Like, I don't want to go too much into the whole kid trophy thing, but it's a really good aspect. And other than that, performance is growing rapidly. So luckily for me, the gym kind of took a huge, it took a huge hit. I mean, 60% loss over the last year. Yeah, huge. But the nutritional aspect, once people started realizing, they're like, oh man, I just put on the COVID-15 and I'm unhealthy. That aspect has really picked up for me, which has been really good because it subsidizes and balances things out. So if anything, I would probably say come to the gym. And if you need help eating, whatever your habits are, nutrition, and I'm not a meal plan. I do write meal plans, but I'm more of a diagnostic nutritionist. My primary background is nutritional biochemistry. So I look at the whole picture of somebody. I'm not just like, oh, you should just eat healthy. Well, that's easy, right? You could Google that. That's fine.
Okay. Awesome. Great. Well, listen, Tony, I think this has been an awesome show. I love the fact that I finally got to dig in a little bit more into who you were. Obviously, we've known each other for quite some time, but you're at the gym. This is not necessarily the conversation that you're going to have, right? So I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing everything about your life with us. I think it's been a great story, and I think it's going to help a lot of people. And can't wait to actually see you face to face in the gym again, man.
Yeah, dude. Let's get here.
Awesome. All right. Well, everybody, Maverick Nation, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Tony, where can people reach you if they want to reach you?
Yeah, they can. My Instagram is Tony_Proformance SRN. So that's Tony_PROFORMANCE SRN. And then Facebook, which I don't really do much with Facebook anymore. I mean, it kind of just all integrates into Instagram, but I think I'm Anthony Tony Ace on Facebook.
Okay, awesome.
So
Very good.
I push a ton of literature out. I'm always supplying something because I'm always, with my dissertation and, I'm writing a book as well. I come up so much. So if you're a woman, you probably should definitely like my page because there's something that you're going to learn without a doubt. And if you're a man, you can still like my page anyway. There's no.
Awesome. All right. Awesome. Well, Maverick Nation, this has been the Maverick Mindset podcast with Romeo Santos and Tony Acevedo. Thank you so much, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye, guys.
All right, brother.